If you ever find that you are double booking yourself or missing appointments, you're going to want to listen to this episode because if you have ever opened your calendar and thought, wait, what was this for? Then you need a little help here. And that's not a bad thing because in today's episode, we're going to walk through the simple system that I use. And I use Google Calendar, but you could use any digital calendar. But I use this system to stay organized, avoid confusion, and make sure every event that I open up on my calendar actually makes sense.
Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renae Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast.
Most of us have so much going on in our lives that we really truly need a good way to organize our time. And if you are creating day stacks, which I talk about here on this podcast, a Google Calendar or a digital calendar of some kind is a great way to do this because it not only allows you to very visually see your day stack, which I talk about here on this podcast, but it also allows you to add a lot of other details in it that we don't necessarily see with other types of calendars. Or if we're using other types of calendars, it can get really, really messy and it's hard to edit when something changes because that's what happens in life, right? Things change, priorities shift, something gets rescheduled, and we need to make sure we are paying attention to that so it doesn't throw off the rest of our week. And using something like a digital calendar makes that much easier to accommodate and be a little bit more flexible because it's easier to shift and change with like very little effort. So I said I love my Google Calendar. I prefer a Google Calendar. I do have an iPhone. Unfortunately, I'm not a huge iPhone fan. If you know me, I always am complaining about my iPhone. I want to go back to a Samsung so bad, but I'm waiting for this one to die because I don't want to buy a new phone. Anyway, I still use a Google Calendar. And the reason I use a Google Calendar is because I can access it from any device I want to. And I don't have to have only an iPhone if I use like the iCalendar or anything like that. Like I don't have to have a specific type of device. I like a Google Calendar because I can access it from my iPhone. I can go onto my laptop. I can go onto my Chromebook. I can go onto my mom's computer if I wanted to and log into my Google account and I can see my calendar and have it accessible to me at all times if I need to. So the reason I love that is that it's just easy and I can access it anywhere. It's not like a paper planner where a paper planner, if you're planning everything out and putting all of your details in your paper planner, what happens if you forget your paper planner at home and you are out and about and you need to do things? You typically have your phone with you. And if you have your phone with you, then you have your Google Calendar with you. So that is why I prefer a Google Calendar. So I still use both. And if you have been listening to this podcast, you already know this. But if you are new here, I want to kind of very quickly summarize how I use the dual system of a Google I keep getting tongue tied, a Google Calendar and a paper planner to make it work for me because that's just how my brain works. You might not need both, but this is how I use them. So, my Google Calendar is where I keep my digital accessible calendar where I can access it on phones or computers or wherever I need to. Because if I lose my phone, I can sign into a different device and nothing is lost. So all of my events, my meetings, my appointments, my time blocks, everything is built in my Google Calendar. For my paper planner, what I use the paper planner for is just a visual brain dump for the week. So I want to view my Google Calendar, my digital calendar, and make sure everything is kind of planned out. And then when I go to my paper planner, I'm not scheduling anything. I'm just writing out the flow of my day to really let it sink into my brain. And then I'm selecting the priority tasks I need to do for the week. And it's just helping give me additional clarity on how my week is going to flow and what I'm prioritizing for the week. So it's more of like a creative exercise for me, not a scheduling exercise. So I hope that that helps to like understand the difference between how I use each of these and how it works for my brain. And today we're actually talking about how I actually go into my Google Calendar and use it to effectively stay organized. So the one thing before I go into like the details here, I just want to say that as an overarching theme here, what you want to do if you're using your I'm just going to assume you're using a Google Calendar because that's what I'm talking about as far as like the details here. I believe you can do this in pretty much any digital calendar, but like I said, I'm a big fan of the Google Calendar. So what you really want to pay attention to here, though, is to always give yourself enough information so that if a stranger opened up your calendar, they would have enough clarity to know what needs to happen. Okay. So think about that. If you went into your calendar right now, whether it's, paper or digital, if you went into your calendar and you handed it to your friend and they opened it up and looked at your calendar, would they have any idea what needs to happen or what needs to be done or where you need to be? Because if they can't, if this is not clear enough, then every time you're opening your calendar, you are making your brain think about all the details that you didn't include. And you are trying to make sure you remember all of those details. And that's exhausting. You might not think it's that big of a deal, but when that gets piled on top of everything else we have going on every single day, and all of the tasks we're trying to remember and all of the responsibilities that we have on our plates, it is mental overwhelm. So we need to give ourselves enough information so that when we open it up, we just have the clarity to know what needs to happen, where we need to be, and we can continue moving on with our day. So that is what I want to really just hit home for you in this episode is that you need to give yourself enough information. So let's just walk through that a little bit. If you are opening up a new event in your calendar, you want it to have first a very clear title. So if you are meeting Jane for coffee on Tuesday morning, then you're going to plug into your calendar and sometimes you might just put Jane and that's the title. And then when you open that up, you're gonna be like, was I supposed to call Jane? What was I doing with Jane? Like, I can't remember. So instead, coffee with Jane or meet Jane for coffee at blank. Like, this is a clearer title. You want to know not just Jane, but you want to know what you're doing with Jane or what is happening with Jane. So you need to give yourself a very clear title so that, again, if your friend or a stranger picked it up, they know what is happening. So you don't have to think about it. And then you're going to go to location. And even if it is the same coffee shop you meet Jane at every single time you meet for coffee, I still want you to plug it in. Plug in the location. Is it a physical location? Put in the address. If it's a virtual coffee date where you're just meeting over FaceTime, plug in the meeting link or put FaceTime so you know to call her through FaceTime. Put that information in. You want this to be your one-stop shop for all of the details. So if you have a physical location, then put it in. If you're meeting her at her house, put that in there. So all you want to do is make sure that if you are driving somewhere and you need travel time, make sure you're accounting for this. So there's two different ways that I would suggest that you do this is you can either build it into the actual meeting event. So let's say you're meeting her for coffee at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. and it takes, 20 minutes to get there. You're going to want to build in, say 30 minutes to give yourself a little time for potential traffic or, to walk from the parking lot, whatever, so that you're a little bit early. So if you are meeting her at 10, you want to leave your house by 9:30, right? So you could either put your event as starting at 9:30 so that your blocked time is at 9:30, and then just so you don't get confused, you could put in the title meet Jane at 10 a.m., even though the meeting block on your calendar begins at 9:30 because you're accounting for travel time. So the other option you could do is just keep your meeting with her as starting at 10 a.m. and keep that time block on there, and then add an additional time block for 30 minutes that just says drive time or travel time or drive to the coffee shop, however you want to do it. I do this on our work calendars, and I support an executive team. So I'm doing this for our CEO all the time. And I always account for travel. And that's all we put in there is just travel. So that is the time that you want to make sure is blocked off because you can't have other things scheduled while you're going to be driving. So you need to make sure it's accommodated, whether you do it as a separate block for travel time or you do it in the actual block of time. And then you just make sure it's clear what time you actually need to be there because again, we need that information very clear when we're looking at it. So when we're doing this, you also don't forget to do it at the end of the meeting as well. Account for travel time to get home. So you're doing it at the beginning and at the end. So however you want to do it, build it in or do two separate blocks. So then we want to go to the description. Is there any other information that would be helpful to your future self? This could be a meeting that's happening this week. This could be something that you are planning for 6 months down the road or even like a year ahead of time. It does not matter. If you have any additional information that's going to be helpful to your future self, plug it in there. Do you want to talk to Jane about certain things? Then plug that in there. Like almost like creating yourself a little agenda to remember what you need to talk to her about. Do you need to bring something to a potluck? Are you putting an event in that is a potluck? What do you need to bring? Do you just need to bring a dish to pass? Put that information in there so that you don't forget. Do you need to remember a dress code for a certain event? Plug it in. Do you need to have a hotel booked? Plug that information in. Copy and paste those details, the confirmation number, what time check-in is, what time checkout is. All of those details can go in your description so that when you open this event up, you have all of the information you need. I just did this with a mud run that I'm doing with my mom and my sisters and some friends. And we're going to be doing this. We've done it every year for the last several years, but we just booked the hotels. So we booked it out and we are splitting rooms and we have the, estimated cost for everybody and all of those details are in my calendar. So when the event comes up in a couple of months, I know I can open my calendar and have all of the details that I need and even a checklist of what I'm supposed to bring because all of it has been in there. Every time something comes up, I go to the event and I add those details in so that I know I'm not going to be going to text messages and emails and trying to find my notes from all of these different places. I know I can go to one spot and get all of the details I need because I know that that is where I have been collecting the details for this event. It's all in my calendar. If a stranger opened it up, they would know what to do and where I need to be during that time. The other thing that I love being able to do with your calendar is creating a simple color code system. So when you are plugging in an event, there's always a default color that it creates. And I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but in mine, it just creates a red event. So I have created a color coding system that allows me to very quickly see what is happening on my calendar. So as an example, you could have your just reminders are lavender. You could have anything tentative or holding as yellow. You could do your meetings and events and appointments are green. So anything that's green, it means you need to be somewhere or you need to be it's more time sensitive. So that is what I do. And you can create whatever colors you want and have whatever system you want. But I would suggest only having a couple so that it's easy to remember what your system is and to not get so detailed where you start getting confused yourself. So keep it super simple. Maybe start with just like if it's tentative or holding, it's yellow. If it is a time sensitive, it is green. And if it's like a work block or has something to do with work, it's blue or gray or something like that. And keep it super simple for yourself to start. You can always add more categories later, but you want to have a super simple color system, at least in the beginning. And then when you are scheduling anything, do not pull up any other calendar. You use one calendar. So you're not pulling up your paper planner. You're not drafting a note on a scrap piece of paper and intending to put it somewhere later. You're not, writing it on a sticky note and shoving it in your purse. You are not doing any of that. If you are scheduling anything, you pull up your calendar on your phone and you plug in the information. And if it's not settled, like let's say you are thinking about something or you're kind of making tentative plans with somebody, but it's not definite and you're not sure if it's going to be a solid thing. So you're like, I'll just wait to put it on my calendar. Nope. Nope. You put it in your calendar and you put in big capital letters, hold in the title and then put a little dash or a colon or a semicolon, whatever you want to do, and then put the title of what you're potentially planning. So let's say you are thinking about going on a camping trip with somebody and you're going to go camping for the weekend. This is something that my husband and I have already done. We have put out potential dates to go camping with some people. So instead of just waiting until all those plans solidify, they are plugged in on the calendar and it's just a big capital in capital letters. It says hold and then it says camping with so and so and all the details of what we're thinking about doing. And then that meeting on my calendar is in yellow because it is still holding, it's tentative. And then when we finalize plans, if it's going to fall through, then I can just delete it off the calendar. If it confirms, then I can go and I can remove the hold and I can just keep the title. I can put any more details in and I can turn it green. And then that means that is something that is set and it's confirmed and those plans have been made. The thing about this is that if you do that, you're not going to double book yourself because if something comes up and somebody else is talking about doing something that weekend, I can pull that up and say, "We've got potential plans. If that falls through, then we can reach out, but this is what we have going on right now." So I'm not booking and then all of a sudden going back and being like, "Oh shoot, like we actually just made plans on the weekend that we were thinking about doing that." So we don't want to be doing that. So you always want to have one spot to be tracking all of your items and give yourself that information so when you pull it up, you know exactly what's happening. So if you get an invitation to something like a wedding, this is a great time to throw all those details in there. Do you need a hotel? Do you need, that dress code noted? Is there an RSVP due date? Plug all of this information in so that you have it all at your fingertips whenever you need it. So I will go through really quickly and recap all of those things. But if you need a breakdown of my weekly planning process, how I kind of review my Google Calendar and then I use my paper planner to really like visualize my week. You can go back to episode 104 and this is that episode is a breakdown of my weekly planning process to stay organized. You can go back and listen to that. Maybe it will be helpful for you, but this episode that we're going over right now is just kind of detailing how each event happens in my phone. And you might listen to this and think, man, this is really overkill. I don't need this much information in every event. And I would suggest that you just try it because it feels like it's overkill, but think about how much your brain is working later when you're trying to remember all of the places you need to be, what time you need to leave, all of the things that are going on in your life. Think about if you could open up your calendar and know exactly what needs to happen. You know how much time you need to travel. You can see your day stack. You can see your time blocks. You can see if anything overlaps, and you can very quickly slide those things into place to restack your day if you need to, based on what you have prioritized in your life. You can open it up and say, no, when you are being asked things that you don't have time for and they aren't a priority, but you feel guilty about not doing it. Like, you can tell people, I am busy, I have plans, or I'm not available at that time, because maybe you even just blocked a block of time for yourself. Maybe it's just relaxation time and it's personal time because you're feeling overwhelmed and you need time to just breathe and read a book and go get a massage and go have coffee with a friend. You can do those things when you really like look at your calendar and you look at your schedule and you really prioritize what is important for you, because life is way too short to be spending it trying to keep up and doing things that we don't want to do. Like, obviously there's going to be times where we have to do things that we're not super thrilled about, because that's just like what we need to do. But we have more say over our time than we realize a lot of times. So this is just one way to really like look at your calendar and think about how you are spending your time and give yourself the clarity so that when you open it up, you aren't constantly questioning what you're supposed to be doing. So a quick recap of how to lay out your calendar is, for one, to use only one calendar, and a digital calendar preferably, because it can always be accessible from any device. Even if you leave your phone at home, like your paper planner at home, you can still access it on any device if you need to. And then when you are going through, make sure you are giving yourself enough information so that if a stranger opened your calendar, they would know exactly what you need to do and where you need to be. So we want, one, a clear title. Two, we want a location. And with the location, we also need to make sure we're accounting for travel time, remember. Three, we want a description with all the details plugged in. Four, we want to use a simple color code so that we can very quickly at a glance see what is time sensitive, what is tentative, all of those things. And then we also want to remember that when we are scheduling anything, we are scheduling it in one place, and that is in our digital calendar. No scrap pieces of paper, no paper planners. We are doing it all in one place so that we do not overbook, overschedule, and we have everything organized so that we can feel the freedom of not having to worry about our schedule. We want to be able to open our schedule and not have to think about what it is we just plugged into our schedule. We want to know exactly where we need to be and what we need to do. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and I will catch you back here on the next episode.
Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.